And welcome back to the Light Morning Show. Remember, this is your morning show, not mine, not ours. Right now, I would like you to welcome my next guest, uh, Miss Angela Taylor, who is the winner of the Intel Award. She's won the Teacher of the Year Award multiple times. She is a self-published author. She also has the honor of having served on several boards as trustee, vice president, and commissioner of education in Bergen County, New Jersey. She is a lifetime learner who also holds two master's degrees. Oh, I'm sorry. That's Dr. Angela Taylor. We want to make
No,
sure that we introduce you right here.
no. I worked on the research team for at the I never completed my dissertation, so you're
Oh,
fine.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, but currently she is training education specialists or educators for the Delaware Department of Education in a program called Kids of the Incarcerated, and she's the author of Finding Healing.
Yes, finding healing.
Please help me welcome uh soon to be. We're gonna put that in your future. No?
No.
Okay. Well, please help me welcome Angela Taylor. How are you?
Hi, good. And just for a point of clarification, my website is findinghealingbook.com.
There you go.
So, thank you.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so right off the bat, tell us about Kids of the Incarcerated. What is that program about, and how do you help the community?
Okay, so I based K.O.I, Kids of the Incarcerated, on my experiences as being a child who had both parents incarcerated, which led me to entering into the foster care system and many other, challenges that come with children who have to depend on the system in order to get their basic needs met, educationally, as well as um, just basic needs, food, shelter, etc. So during I've been in education for over 30 years. So during my time working with young people, I have been, my experiences has actually been something that I've been able to draw from in order to better support many of my students in various situations over the years. In 2020, I started a program, which is a firm called K.O.I, Kids of the Incarcerated, Finding Healing with Angie. The Finding Healing is my book series, which I talk about all of the experiences growing up in that era and having different challenges. So, what I try to do is educate the caregivers. I talk about what kinds of behaviors you may encounter when you're trying to work with a particular population where they have endured this type of trauma. A lot of people are using trauma in different ways, but I'm very specific when it comes to your primary caregivers not being able to, for whatever reason, under whatever circumstances, not being able to provide, how that affects the child and their just basic necessity to have that kind of connection and not have that. And then the stigmas that society may put on being a child who has parents who have been incarcerated for various reasons. I talk about how mental health has played a huge part in that dynamic, and why our community in particular tends to be proportionately uh, at a disadvantage when it comes to the amount of our young people who are living with grandparents or are in uh, the system or have now gone into the next generation of being in the penal system because of them, they themselves now being next generation. So I do educate my fellow educators because that's where I spent the bulk of my career. I also talk to people who may work in um, youth facilities. I talk to people who are and try to educate foster parents who, so they understand that some of the dynamics are not, you know, they're not personal. They're not to be taken personal, but they are part of the trauma response that a lot of these young people are going through. And if you're going to be working with this population, there are some specific things you ought to know.
Okay. All right. You gave us a lot to chew on. If you're just listening, our guest is Angela Taylor, who has a program called K.O.I, Kids of the Incarcerated. And we're talking about how her program is helping educators, foster parents, and the community deal with people who have gone through, young people who are going through the traumatic experience of having parents that are incarcerated. Uh, I want to hear about how you personally were able to achieve despite your personal background, if you don't mind. But before we go to that, I'd like to ask you, what don't we as the community specifically know about working with young people who have incarcerated parents that we don't know? What do we need to know or consider that we generally don't as a community?
As a community, we lost the idea that it takes a village, right? So oftentimes we'll judge a child based on where they're coming from. So rather than, look at a child and say, okay, they're coming to school dressed this way or that way, instead of going into the blame and why is the parents not doing this or that, we need to understand that something's going on. When a child shows up with a certain attitude, a certain demeanor, and of course, a certain physical appearance, there is something happening. We may not know what it is, but something is happening. Kids don't just show up this way. I hear a lot of people in our generation making comments like, oh, this generation, they're blaming it on the times, right? Everything's
Right.
getting blamed on the times, or in some cases, and in some cases, it is choices, and I'll talk to that when I go back to the comment, like, why, how did I get to this level despite, or I say despite, or because of my experiences, right?
Right.
um but we as a community have to get out of the, kind of like the stick in the mud place where, these kids, you can't say nothing to them, you can't do nothing with them, you can't, we got to get out of that mindset. We can do something with our young people
Right.
when they know, when we come at them from a place of love and genuine, concern, they
Right.
respond. So
Okay.
mhm,
I was going to say, generally, especially when I come across a group of young men,
mhm,
I will, I will always say,
mhm,
gentlemen. I'll greet them as
yes,
gentlemen. I'll say,
yes,
good afternoon, good morning, gentlemen. Uh,
yep.
I don't like the fact that they respond, hey, what's up, old head? But I get it. In their mind, they're being
Yeah,
respectful.
right,
Um,
right.
but let's talk about something that you said at one point. I did work for several youth services programs, and so
Mhm.
when you're talking about dress, um, I think, and you correct me if I'm wrong because you're the expert. Sometimes kids will, or young people will do what we consider acting out almost as a call for help. Because if a lot of times we don't even know how to respond in certain situations. And so if you're talking about a 9,
Yeah.
10, 11, 12, even 13, 14-year old, they're not going to have the specific playbook to be able to ask for the help that they need.
Right. So, see, like, so for example, like what you just said earlier, when you come across a group of young men, you say good morning, good, good afternoon, or whatever. And as do I. And as someone who, if you read my book, you'll know that I had a whole nother experience growing up as a teenager. And from my experience, I tell people, even saying good morning to people actually makes you safe. Meaning that you're less likely to be a victim of a crime because you just look at somebody in their face, say good morning, humanize each other, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So unfortunately, though, a lot of other people do not engage our young people with any level of respect. If anything, they may cross the street if they see them. They will rarely give them eye contact. They feel like that's the way to go. I'm going to avoid them. If I have something to say, I'm going to be critical. And you don't have the right to be critical if you have not at least engaged them on some level. Like, for example, I've seen people interact with, some of our young people. They've never said anything to this person, and they say, "Pull your pants up." Okay. Do you really think that's not a good way to approach someone, right or wrong? You don't get to make that call if you don't have a relationship with that person.
True.
Now, after you've had maybe a couple encounters, you say come on, you say hey, and definitely not in front of a group,
Right.
because
Right.
these young people, number one, you know in some cases they'll take negative attention over no attention at all.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Even dogs acknowledge each other on the street, and human beings, we desire to, at the very least, whether even if it has to be in a negative, we want to be um seen, right?
Exactly. 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 Okay. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a quick break, and when we come back, um, can we hear a little bit of your story, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you are listening to The Light, the morning show edition, and we'll be back right after this.